Good morning, day 258. We have a really beautiful morning with some fog on the lake and mist. And I just saw a baby cow running across at the field over there. So cute. Imagine like all the animals feel a bit frisky when it's a little cool out and playful in the morning. And then the sun is behind the trees over there. It's really cool. We've got this like mango colored sky, maybe even a little bit salmon colored, little pink orange glow going on. I'll turn it back around when we get through the trees or around the trees. You don't see these colors a lot in the morning. It's very cool. And then the mist over the trees. So beautiful. So peaceful. It feels very peaceful today. As an Enneagram 9, I love that. I love feeling peaceful. I am going to talk about Romans chapter 1 today. And I have titled today, Do You Encourage? Paul uses the word encourage several times throughout this chapter. And that word has actually been one that has been swirling in my brain for a couple of weeks now. As a matter of fact, I did something really brave and I had to encourage myself to do it. And I started a daily email, and I'm building my email list, and I really want to build a community of encouragement. And I'm calling even my email Daily Encouragement, because that is really what I think is on my heart to do. Maybe the heart of who I am, even using my curiosity and my talents and gifts to encourage people. To encourage myself to become who God would have me be and encourage each other. Iron sharpens iron, right? Okay, I told you I would pause and show you the colors in the sky today. Beautiful mango kind of colors. And anyway, so Paul is writing a letter to the church in Rome. Hence the name of the book, Romans. And he does this while he's in Corinth. So we went through the book of Acts, which gave us sort of a summary of his 3 missionary trips. One of which we know he was in Corinth. I think that was during his 2nd missionary trip. I feel like I'm putting myself through seminary. Self-educated seminary. And so now we're going back a little bit and learning that while he was there, and for some of these missionary places, he was there for years. So of course it makes sense that he was doing a lot of writing and teaching and, all the things that we're not given a lot of those details. We're just given kind of a high level overview of what he was up to. And so we know he was writing a lot of letters. And he was saying in the beginning of his letter, the common like openings that we do in a letter, like, how you doing? I'm thinking about you, miss you, all those kind of sentiments. And then he's saying, I'm so encouraged at like the prospect of seeing you. And my purpose is to encourage you in your faith, and that also looking forward to your faith growing so that I will be encouraged. See, there's a reciprocal encouragement going on. And then he talks about the love of God and what believing in the way and living in the way can do for people, the way of love. And how much of a difference that can make in our lives. And yet there's humans have struggled since the beginning of time to achieve living fully in that love. we have a tendency to, because we have bodies and flesh has its own sort of ideas of what it wants in the moment, that don't often agree with our long-term success and good. And we get tempted by our flesh, and then we can fall into sin, which is separation from God, or even separation from love and our higher selves, and living our best lives from a very just practical standpoint. And temptation is real, but encouragement is real too. And then he even uses the word encouragement at the end of talking about all the kinds of trouble that people get into when they're separated from God. And misery likes company. When you're in the midst of doing things that are not good for you, but you just can't help yourself, you tend to find like-minded people in the same struggle, because it's hard to voluntarily pull yourself out of that. And we're like, well, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to take someone with me. You don't want to be in isolation. Again, we have been talking about that over and over again. People are meant for community. So what kind of community are you in? What kind of community and relationships and characteristics are you encouraging in yourself and other people? And how does that actively play out in your life to the benefit of others? Encouragement, the definition of it, is to give courage, but it can also mean, in very simple terms, to persuade. So encouragement isn't always a good thing. I think maybe even but when you look up the word temptation is, you know something's not good for you, and you do it anyway. You know something's not good for somebody else, and you tempt them intentionally to join you. Like, again, we don't want to be alone in our wrongdoings. We like to, that's how we justify and lie to ourselves. That's how we rationalize it. Well, other people are doing it. How many times have you used that argument as a youngster, or even an adult? Like, how can it be wrong? Or now we're inundated with marketing and advertising that intentionally uses things to tempt us to do things that are not good for us. They know it. They do it knowingly for profit. Like, yes, we live in a capitalist society that is allowed to do that because they give us autonomy and agency to make our own choices. So we get to choose. Do we want to live a life that is good and healthy, which usually, if it's good and healthy for us, it's good for the greater good and for those around us. Our relationships improve. Like, we know these things. So we're not talking about some mysterious thing. So when people use methodologies to tempt, to encourage people to do things that are not good for us, like, we know what that is, but it can cause confusion, because internally you're like, well, oh, it feels so good. Like, to eat the chocolate cake, where maybe a small piece would fit within the overall plan of, like, having a little bit would be fine and not detrimental to you. But if you're eating a huge piece every day, there's going to be consequences for that. That is not good for us. Like, we know the difference. And Paul uses the example of inappropriate or sexual relationships that were going on at the time but I don't want to focus on that as much as I want to focus on just the flesh, because it's always something. He could have used other examples and said the same thing. So we don't want to get focused on just one thing. When you are doing something that you know is not for your long-term good, and that not only separates you from God, it separates you from yourself. You start sending yourself mixed messages, and then you cause confusion. Mixed messages cause confusion. And he talks about that. People become confused when they start engaging in certain behaviors that are driven only by their flesh, and they know better, and they're going against their own knowing better, their own inner knowing. Confusion sets in. Of course it does. Think about even from a parenting perspective too. Are you saying one thing and then doing another? That's what finally got me. Like, I was like, I just couldn't look at myself in the mirror anymore. I was like, do as I say, but not as I do. Who am I kidding here? Like, of course they're going to do what I do. I am confusing that. That is how we actually encourage each other, even more than our words. It's by our actions. It's by role modeling, by living proof. And when we don't do that, when our actions don't line up with our words, like, that's not encouraging. I'm not going to trust you or believe you. I don't trust myself or believe myself. So we can encourage each other to do better. And when you're not there yet, you can come to me and borrow courage. I can say, you can do it. I've done it. Trust me, I know it's hard, but if I can do it, anybody can do it. Like, that's like my life mantra or mission now. Like, seriously, if I can do this, anybody can do this. And it doesn't have to be done all at once. And not thinking of God as this big judge on a throne in the sky going, you need to make an about face right now, all at once, or you shall be smited. No. God, there is a nature to sin, but people do not have a sin nature. And Paul doesn't say, like, I think that message gets missed. It's a subtle but important difference. It's actually not subtle. The wording is subtle, but the meaning and the impact is not subtle. It's a huge difference. People do not have, we are not broken, we are not sinful by nature. Do we have the capacity to do bad? Absolutely. Because bad is bad. There's a nature to badness. There's a nature to sin. And that doesn't change. But we have free will. We get to choose. And it's an invitation to encourage each other to do better when we know better. Encouragement is such a powerful thing. And we can use it for good or not so good. And when we're in ignorance and we don't know any better, we will be deemed as innocent. We've been told that along the way too. But once you know better and you know what you're doing and you encourage others to join you, or you tempt and you give into temptation, that's when we get into trouble. Because that's a knowing. There's a knowingness that takes place that is underneath. And then you choose to do it anyway. And that is where we get ourselves into trouble. And we know it. And sometimes it seems too hard and all the things to overcome this temptation, overcome our flesh, and what it wants and what it desires. And some of these things feel good. But then soon after, you start having negative consequences, whether it's from a hangover, literally from like alcohol, or having too much alcohol, or too much food. Your bank account gets drained, your relationships are having trouble, like all of those things. They have consequences. There's proof and evidence one way or the other. And yet, as humans, we will deny. We will find all kinds of ways to deny the truth, even though it's right there in front of us, to justify, to rationalize. And then when we start to take others down with us, just because in that justification and in that rational lying, that's when we really become complicit in knowingly engaging in sin. And that's what causes that internal divide and the internal judgment, because you know better. You know better. And it feels awful. But it seems so like overwhelming. So our temptation is to just dig the hole a little bit deeper, deny, lie to ourselves, lie to others, go join a crowd where nobody else is admitting that we're doing the wrong thing and living the wrong way and having these consequences. We're celebrating and encouraging it in each other. Ugh. Been there, done that. No, thank you. I want a greater peace of mind now. And I want love. I want true love, not false, self-satisfying, temporary, that lasts a minute and then I've got to go chase it again. I want lasting, sustaining love and true courage. It takes courage to live this way because it also requires us to look at others in non-judgment. And that, my friends, is hard. That's what Jesus came and role modeled. And I think Paul himself struggles with this one because of who he naturally is made to be, and the characteristics that God uses to help him spread his mission. And maybe that's even one of the thorns, he talks about a thorn in his side that he just can't, maybe it's his own judgmentalism towards others that he can't quite let go of. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But nonetheless, his heart is to build a community of encouragement. And we need to ask ourselves, what do I encourage with my behavior? Not just my words, but my behavior. What example am I setting? What am I encouraging in others? Who am I encouraging? Am I being deliberate? Am I being intentional? Am I looking beyond myself and my own struggles? Because I will tell you that finally looking beyond myself and how hard it was going to be to change. And when I realized the truth, you can turn your head to the truth. That doesn't mean the truth isn't there and it's not going to show itself. I could face the truth, surrender to the truth, accept the truth, and then I can encourage myself that it was worth it to live in integrity as a parent, and beyond that, to reach out and intentionally encourage others. That yes, it is hard. It's hard. Temptation is real, and it is alluring, and it is it's all the things that we know it is. And yet we do have a choice. We can make a different choice. And once you start making different choices and going in a new direction, you'll start to have that evidence as well, those consequences as well. And then that will even encourage you. Your own behavior and your own new consequences will have an encouraging effect on you. And then that's when you can go, oh my gosh, and then reach out to somebody else. But a lot of us, because we still live in shame from prior behavior, and we don't want people to know the truth about us, like to keep this all inside and keep it private. Oh, I don't want you to know that bad thing about me. And yet, if we would just be honest and transparent about it, how encouraging would it be to share, hey, I know what you're struggling, instead of kind of pretending you're holier than thou. I mean, that's what's wrong with our churches now, that we've created this a very discouraging, oftentimes, environment in our own churches. Anyway, so be an encourager, which means also being non-judgmental, and accepting of where people are, and accepting the truth of how tempting things are, how tempting it is to turn towards things that are not good for us, to self-soothe, to cope. Like, it's real. And we've got to have compassion for each other and encourage each other that there is a better way. Is it hard to overcome some temptation? Yes. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And if we can lock arms and treat each other kindly and with compassion and encouragement, the world can be transformed. All right, rise and shine. Have a great day. All right, together, we can do it. We can do it. We can. Let's keep encouraging each other.